chairs for about 50 people, so I guess there must be about 70 because they added quite a few.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello. So, hello everybody. My name is Alex Zucker. I am a translator, and together with Margaret Carson, where are you, Margaret? Margaret. We are the co-chairs of the PEN America Translation Committee, and we are putting on this event tonight as part of the PEN America World Voices Festival. And I'm also serving as a trustee of the board, so on behalf of the 4,000 members of PEN America, the trustees, and the staff, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the 11th Annual PEN World Voices Festival of International Literature. Co-founded, that's right, co-founded by author Salman Rushdie and Esther Allen, a wonderful translator from Spanish and one of our predecessors as chair of the Translation Committee. PEN is an organization of writers active in more than 100 countries. We are the only organization dedicated both to defending free expression and to celebrating literature. We work on behalf of jailed and threatened writers, speak out against censorship and surveillance, and offer provocative literary programming. I hope nobody gets too provoked tonight. The PEN America Translation Committee advocates on behalf of literary translators, working to foster a wider understanding of their art and offering professional resources for translators, publishers, critics, bloggers, and others with an interest in international literature. You can visit us at pen.org/translation. Please do. For more information about PEN in general and details on other festival events, visit pen.org or visit the table here in the back. And you can receive a discount when you join in person. Or for information about becoming a member, you get a discount for festival events. It's near the end of the festival, so you won't get too much of a discount now. But we are expanding our membership and activities. I believe membership, Daniel Guzman is here tonight also, right? Daniel in the back, to talk to him if you want to know more about becoming a member. Sign up for our newsletter, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. And last thing, I'd like to thank the sponsors, supporters, and volunteers who make the PEN World Voices Festival possible. Thank you for being part of the audience. Thank you all for coming today. Enjoy the event, and I will turn it over to Michael Moore.
Thank you very much. This is the 11th World Voices Festival. I don't know if there's any numerologists in the audience, but it is only the, what I do know about numerology is that since this is the ninth translation slam that we've done, 9 is the perfect number. And I've got a very perfect group for you tonight. I'm very happy to see you all here. We've been kind of a wandering event. We spent a few years at the Bowery Poets Cafe, then we were at the Public Theater, and now I think we found just the perfect venue here at the Nuyorican Poets Cafe. And I really wanted to thank the cafe for hosting this event and for giving us a home. This is not, those of you who are slam fans, this is not like your usual slam. This is not a contest. We're not asking you to hold up numbers to say who is good or who is bad. What we try to do is we get as close as possible maybe to an extemporaneous translation by giving our translators just a short amount of time, no contact with each other or with the author, and then show the results on the screen tonight as they read. First of all, thanking our sponsors, of course, the Nuyorican Poets Cafe, the PEN Translation Committee, and the Cultural Services of the French Embassy. France has been a lot in the news with PEN this week, and I really have to thank them for their constant support of the festival and for their support of writers throughout the world. What are we going to do tonight? We have a two-part program. First, we'll be going from French into English, and the second part, we will be going from English into Spanish. And I'm very lucky, and you're lucky, to have some very committed writers and translators with you tonight. First of all, we have here from Senegal, excuse my glasses, Boris Diop, who is a prolific Senegalese novelist, journalist, and screenwriter. He has been awarded Senegal's Grand Prix des Lettres as well as Prix Tropique. Murambi, The Book of Bones, has been called a miracle by Toni Morrison and featured on the Zimbabwe International Book Fair's list of the 100 best African books of the 20th century. Incidentally, the theme of the festival this year is Africa, and I think it's a really unique opportunity for you to get to know more about African writers. In general, one of the reasons we do this event, one of the reasons that Penn does the World Voices Festival is to draw attention to international literature. And it's very difficult to get published in America, period. It's very difficult to get translations published. But I think that the fact that you people turn out in such great numbers year after year after year for this and for the other events is proof that the publishers maybe need that people are interested in hearing voices from the rest of the world. And we're very interested. So Boris has been in this is your third event, and you have one more coming up tomorrow, I believe.
Tomorrow,
yes. So he's been very busy. And I think they've kept you in not all 5 boroughs, but the Bronx and Manhattan. At any rate, he has been to America before. He was a visiting professor at Rutgers, and in 2014 he was in Zurich. He was currently teaching Wolof literature at Gaston Berger University in Senegal. Thank you, Boris. And Boris will be translated by my old friend Marjolein Jager. Did I say it right?
Wow.
Oh, I tried. the Hager, right? Who translates from Dutch and French with a particular interest in Francophone African literature. I was so happy that she was available for this evening because she is very committed to translating African writers and African women writers, but I figured that you would make an exception for Boris. Yes. And Alison, who is a new friend, also joins in. She translates from French and English and has published 2 book-length translations in addition to short translated fiction that has appeared in translation. She is currently collaborating with French-speaking authors from Madagascar to introduce the Anglophone world, I don't know if that's you or not, to Malagasy literature in translation. Enough of my talking. I would love, and I'm sure you would love, to hear our writers. Boris?
Can I start doing some sentence in Wolof?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I'm happy to be here to celebrate different languages, French, Spanish, English, and even a bit of Wolof, if you don't mind. I will start, maybe 1 or 2 minutes. The first page of my novel in Wolof, the first chapter, some lines. Àddina dund dee leneen newu fi badu lii rek demal maa ngi ñëw. Naka laa wax loolu daal di déggaat woykat ba àddina amul solo ndeysaan ku ci dee yaa ñàkk sa bakkan ndeysaan. Booba gone laa woon nekk ci sama diggu doole yaakaar ne dara tëwuma maa fi dàqoon a fecc bëree bayre ba nga ne lii lu mu doon fu ma jaaraan jànq ji di ma tooñ naan ngiraan fay jàppal fii ngiraan fay bàyyil faa mbaa nga dégg ci jeeg ju ndaw ji ku ne moo ngiraan fay looy jaay maanaa nii billaay yow yàlla na nga koote. And now I start with French.
Thank you. The next slide, please. Yeah.
Le matin, à mon réveil, la ville dort encore. À l'arrière du salon, je me glisse sans bruit entre 2 battants. Notre balcon, exigu, encombré, le bois vermoulu craque sous mes pieds. Hier, Myriam a lavé les habits de Sidia et le linge, encore un peu humide, me cache la rue. Je l'écarte. Des formes s'entrecroisent sur le terrain vague, les chiens errants du quartier. Je les ai entendus aboyer de concert juste avant de m'arracher du lit. Ils lèvent d'un seul mouvement leurs yeux que je devine inquiets vers moi. Ils sont faméliques et sales. Tout leur fait peur et ils font peur à tout le monde. Peut-être enragés, sait-on jamais. Le terrain vague, c'est l'ultime lieu de vie au milieu des blocs de béton. J'aime voir ces tessons de bouteilles, ces touffes d'herbe, sa terre craquelée et sèche, noire par endroits. Ces déchirures et ces débris me prennent aux tripes et me ramènent à mon enfance vagabonde, là-bas. Bien sûr, Il n'en a plus pour longtemps le terrain vague. Dimanche dernier, 2 étrangers aux airs importants sont venus avec des gens de la mairie. Je les ai vus frapper le sol du pied, regarder avec méfiance les maisons alentour, prendre des mesures, parler entre eux, parler et parler encore. Oh, je sais très bien. Ils veulent égorger le terrain vague. Je voyais déjà le sang sur leurs mains. Bientôt, ils vont abattre ces pans de mur, pareils à 2 vieilles dents carriées avec leurs briques rouges dénudées. Dieu seul sait pourquoi. Ils vont nous foutre leur immeuble en pleine gueule, ceux-là. Ou même une tour. C'est tout petit, le terrain vague. Mais ils sont bien capables de ça. Rien ne les arrête. C'est des types complètement cinglés. Ou même pas une tour. Juste un chouette mini-market du genre, ouvert jusqu'à minuit, avec de la saloperie à 0,99 € et des vendeuses aux yeux perdus dans le vague. Je redoute le retour sur ces lieux. Creusés, perforés, étouffés. Puis un jour, les ouvriers descendront de leurs échafaudages et s'en iront ailleurs, le casque sous le bras. La rue deviendra soudain plus rêveuse et à peine verra-t-on l'horizon dévaler les pentes de l'abîme. Le ciel est clair et des taches de lumière slaloment au loin. Une enseigne verte fait diversion. Elle se balance, elle danse parmi les dernières étoiles. Les maisons sont pareilles à des boîtes d'allumettes prétentieuses. Certaines sont, à vrai dire, bien mignonnes, avec leurs balcons fleuris. Sans doute des poètes, à l'âme délicate, rêvent-ils là-dedans. À quoi bon, je me le demande. Ce silence est celui du tombeau. Après la prière, me voici dans le vieil ascenseur. C'est étroit et ça sent la pisse et la graisse. Ça grince. Il y a de la poussière. Et en grosses lettres de merde, les parois niquent la mère de tout le monde. L'air frais me fouette le visage. Ce n'est pas la première tape amicale de la ville. C'est la vie qui me fout une claque, oui. Là-haut, Myriam et notre fils n'ont pas bougé une seule fois. On dirait le même corps en menus morceaux sous les couvertures, le même corps dispersé ça et là, sur le canapé, par terre, sur des nattes. Jusque dans son sommeil, Sidia est face à la télé. J'ai appris à me mouvoir à pas de velours dans l'appartement. Je n'ai pas grand-chose à leur offrir, mais je veux qu'ils dorment bien. Quand ils sont si paisibles, c'est comme moi-même en train de me reposer. De temps à autre, une voiture passe sur l'autoroute du Sud, là, juste au-dessus de ma tête. Je sens les vapeurs d'essence monter peu à peu dans l'air, puis les vrombissements des moteurs semblent à chaque instant plus proches. On dirait la ville qui amasse et recrache les impuretés de la nuit pour s'éclaircir la gorge, pour mieux éructer, pour mieux gronder. La ville, jeune fauve plein de vigueur, s'apprête à bondir sur sa proie. Les premiers morts ont déjà surgi de leur tombeau et les voilà qui se déversent sur les boulevards.
Merci.
Is this close enough? Can I? I'm bad with I'm bad with technology. Is that good? I think so. Like a shadow. When I wake up in the morning, the city is still asleep. Noiselessly, I slip through the double door at the back of the living room, our balcony, cramped and cluttered. The worm-eaten wood creaks beneath my feet. Miriam washed Sidia's clothes yesterday, and the still faintly moist laundry hides the street from my view. I brush it aside. Shapes sifting in and out on the piece of wasteland. The neighborhood's stray dogs. I heard them barking in unison just before I dragged myself out of bed. They raised their anxious eyes to me as one, dirty and emaciated. They're afraid of everything, and everyone is afraid of them. Maybe they're rabid, maybe they're not. Amid the blocks of cement, the wasteland is the very last place to contain any life. I love seeing its shards of glass, its clumps of grass, its dry, cracked earth, black in some spots. Its gut-wrenching gashes and trash take me back to my rambling childhood, over there. Of course, it won't be here much longer, this wasteland. Last Sunday, 2 important-looking foreigners came with some people from the town hall. I saw them pounding the ground with their feet, looking suspiciously at the surrounding houses, taking measurements, talking among themselves. Talk, and more talk. I know. They want to slit the wasteland's throat. I could already see the blood on their hands. Soon they'll be slaughtering those sections of bare red brick wall that look like 2 decaying old teeth. God only knows why. They'll be shoving their building down our throats, those guys. Or perhaps even a tower. The wasteland is really very small, but they're quite capable of doing just that. Nothing stops them. Their sword is completely out of its mind. Or not even a tower, just a cute little mini market, the kind that's open until midnight, with junk costing 99 cents and salesgirls staring into space. I dread their return to this place, poking, penetrating, suffocating. Then one day, the construction workers will descend from the scaffolding and go elsewhere, helmet under their arm. Suddenly the street will grow more pensive, and you'll barely be able to see the horizon come whooshing down the slopes of the decay. The sky is clear, and patches of light slalom in the distance. A green sign creates a diversion, swinging and dancing among the last few remaining stars. The houses look like matchboxes stuck one on top of the other. Some of them are huge and pretentious. Others are actually quite sweet with their flower-covered balconies. Surely, inside there are daydreaming poets with a delicate soul. What for, I wonder? The silence is like a grave. After prayers, I'm here in the old elevator. It's narrow and smells of piss and grease. It creaks, it's dusty, and in big fat letters on its walls, everyone's mother gets laid. The cool air stings my face. It's not a first friendly pat from the city. It's life giving me a wallop, yes indeed. Up there, Miriam and our son didn't budge even once. You'd say it was the same body in tiny pieces underneath the blankets, the same body scattered hither and yon on the sofa, on the ground, on the mats. Even in his sleep, Sidia faces the TV. I've learned to move about through the apartment on cat's feet. I don't have much to offer them, but I want them to sleep soundly. When they are this peaceful, it is as if I myself am getting some rest. From time to time, a car passes by on the southern highway, there, just above my head. I smell the gas fumes gradually rising into the air. Then, with every minute, the roar of the motor seems to come closer. You'd think that to clear its throat, the city was collecting and spitting out every one of the night's impurities. The better to belch, the better to gripe. The city, a wild young beast full of vim and vigor, is preparing to leap on its prey. The first dead bodies have already emerged from their graves, and there they are, pouring out onto the boulevards.
And now for Allison.
So I have to follow that. A shadow in the morning. When I wake up in the morning, the city is still sleeping. I slip noiselessly between the shutters on the other side of the living room. Our balcony, cramped, cluttered. The worm-eaten wood groans under my feet. Yesterday, Miriam washed Sidia's clothes. The laundry is still slightly damp and blocks my view of the street. I move it aside. There are figures circulating in the vacant lot, the neighborhood strays. I heard them barking in unison just before I pulled myself out of bed. They lift their eyes, which I think seem worried, toward me as one. They're filthy and gaunt. Everything scares them, and everyone's scared of them. Possibly rabid, you never know. The vacant lot is the last living space within the concrete blocks. I like the broken bottles, the clumps of grass, the dirt, dry and cracked and black in some places. The gashes and trash get me right in the chest and take me back to my vagrant childhood, back there. Of course, this vacant lot doesn't have much time left. Last Sunday, 2 important-looking foreign guys came with people from the mayor's office. I watched them testing the ground with their feet, eyeing the surrounding houses suspiciously, taking measurements, talking to each other, so much talking. I know perfectly well. They want to slit the throat of this vacant lot. I could already see the blood on their hands. Soon, God only knows why, they'll come to knock down the walls, the ones that look like a pair of decaying old teeth with their bare red bricks. They're going to throw their building up right in our fucking faces. Maybe it'll be a tower. The vacant lot is very small, but they can definitely make that happen. Nothing can stop them. They're completely nuts. Maybe it won't be a tower, just a slick mini-mart, the open till late kind with 99-cent crap and cashiers with vacant expressions. I'm not looking forward to when they come back, ready to bore, to break, to suffocate. Then one day, the workers will climb down from their scaffolding and go somewhere else, helmets in hand. The street will suddenly lull us to sleep, and we'll barely be able to see the horizon hurtling down the slippery slope to the abyss. The sky is clear and streaked with light in the distance. A green sign draws my attention. It sways, dances among the morning stars. The houses are just like nested matchboxes. Some of them are huge and pretentious. Truth be told, some are actually pretty nice, with flowers blooming on their balconies. I bet there are poets inside, sensitive, dreaming. What's the point, I wonder? This is the silence of a tomb. After prayers, I'm in the old elevator. It's a tight fit, and it smells like piss and grease. It makes a grating sound. There's dust everywhere, and there are big-ass letters all over the walls telling everyone to go fuck themselves. Fresh air whips my face. It's not the city giving me a friendly clap on the back. It's life, messing my shit up. Up there, Miriam and our son haven't moved a muscle. It's like they're the same body in little pieces under the covers, the same body sprinkled here and there, on the couch, on the floor, on a mat. Even in his sleep, Sidya is facing the TV. I've learned to pad silently around the apartment. I don't have much to give them, but I want them to get a good night's sleep. When they're slumbering so peacefully, it's like I'm resting too. Every so often, a car goes by on the southbound highway, just there, right above my head. I can smell the gas fumes in the air slowly increasing. Then the rumbling engines that seem to be closer every second. It's like the city is gathering up all of the overnight impurities to spit them out and clear its throat, to make it easier to belch, to make it easier to yell. The city, a young lion with rippling muscles, is getting ready to pounce on its prey. The first corpses have already emerged from their tombs. Watch them pour out onto the boulevards.
You know, this is the first year we've done prose, and every year I'm always afraid that the 2 translations will be identical and we'll just have to close up shop and go home, you know? And it's funny, when I was looking at the 2 translations earlier today and trying to think what kind of questions I might ask, I was thinking of how you visualize the text. But as you read, and as you read, and you read, and you read, of course, I thought of what you hear, the sound that you're hearing. And I guess because I was struck so much by the detail of the vacant lot versus the wasteland. And each is equally valid in its way. Maybe, Boris, you'd like to start off with some questions or commentary.
I'm waiting for questions.
You're waiting for questions. Okay, well, first of all, I mean, since this is your first confrontation with each other, what were you imagining? Well, let's look at the vacant lot, for example. And even hearing this text read for the first time, I imagine, first of all, as you hear him speak, then as you look at the other translator's work, you were probably revising what you've done, or maybe not. It's sort of inevitable, because translation is an endless process of revision.
that never ends.
I was revising the morning after I sent this to you, so
Yeah.
this is just a continuation of that.
So why the vacant lot versus the wasteland, I guess? And I think that's a visual issue.
For me, it was very much waste. It's just that vacant seems almost too kind. I mean, lots can be vacant and sort of have nice little grass growing in it.
Can
and
everyone hear?
flowers.
Yeah, just
Sorry.
yeah.
But the idea of wasteland, to me, that waste was important.
Waste as in rubbish.
Yes.
Thinking.
And
Mhm.
as in being wasted, going forlorn, nobody cares.
Mhm. And you instead, Alison, went more for a construction metaphor, or
I had looked at the fact that it was surrounded by concrete, and I had looked at the fact that later on the shop girls also have the yeux perdus dans la vague, which is the same vague word. And it took me until then to realize that I can link those two. And so I put the vacant lot with vacant expression.
Nice.
And I'm jealous of the wasteland idea. I guess my thought process was much more of a place where nothing exists except to the narrator and the people who live around it. And that's when people who don't have that wasteland or that vacant lot in their community walk by it, that's all they see is nothing. Whereas it's, the last remaining place of life for this
Except for
narrator.
the capitalist builders who see a lot.
But that's putting it on top of,
Yeah, right,
of
right, right.
what's not there for them.
Yeah.
Boris?
Yeah, when I saw Marjolaine's name in my computer, I thought, oh, I already met her many years ago in Dakar for a very short time. And our conversation, if you remember, focused on translation. She had just at that time finished translation of Moudimbe's novel, Le Bel Immonde. Nobody, I think, can translate Le Bel Immonde either in English, in Italian, or in any other language, because it's, I think, typically French, Le Bel Immonde. And she told me, I've decided to call the book Before the Birth of the Moon. You see the difference between Le Bel Immonde, I don't know, Le Bel Immonde, a kind of human monster. That's what it means. And it becomes Before the Birth of the Moon, something that's in the novel. Me too, have been very impressed. It was amazing for me to hear your two translations, because when she finished, I just thought there was no other way to translate, and it wasn't true. Alison did very well also, and it's very interesting. May I have translated from Wolof what I have read previously. I have translated this book into French. It has been translated into Spanish, English, Italian, etc. But the first translation from Wolof to French, I did it, and it was a very it was a fascinating experience, in fact. Yeah.
Do you often write in Wolof first? Or always? Or sometimes?
No, I started doing that, I think, in 2002. My first novel has been published in 1981, but the first time I decided to write in Wolof, it was in 2002.
As I listened to you reading the translations, and and I don't know if it was your voice, it was certainly the impression that I had when I was reading it this morning, that it was somewhat languid in a way, that was sort of tinged with melancholy. Your translation was much more visceral and gritty in a way, and you really engaged in colloquialisms. Really, and I think that it does, you cannot translate without interpreting a text.
Right.
What made you see so much languor in this text? Even from the very beginning, you'll notice when we look at these slides, just what a big difference the word order makes, putting the adverb noiselessly at the beginning. Noiselessly, I slipped through the double door, and I slipped noiselessly between the shutters. I mean, it makes a huge difference.
Yes, and I play a lot with that word order. That's probably takes up much of my time. It's like, oh, no, that should go up front. No, that should go.
And-
To me, it is a very sad character in a way. I mean, he clearly loves his wife and child. He's got, because I read further on in the section of you, he's got a menial job, and he is, people like that who come from the foreigners and the other guys from town hall are not even a threat to him anymore. They just make him resign himself to the fate of this area that he lives in. There is a sadness about him to me.
And Allison, maybe, I said visceral, but maybe there's a kind of anger that comes through in your translation.
I had seen it as that kind of as a jumping off point, and that the fact that this story exists and that you had him tell this story was kind of the only power that he had in the situation. He couldn't do anything about what was happening. He couldn't necessarily do anything to really provide for his family, the very basic thing of what everyone wants to do. And the only thing that he has the ability to do is tell this story, and that's the only thing that he has control over.
And another thing I see happening is you using personification a little bit more, For example, the worm-eaten wood creaks beneath my feet in your version, and in Allison, the worm-eaten wood groans under my feet. Was there something in the text that led you to, or was it an interpretation of the French word, which was les bois me crack, ce métier.
Yeah, to me it was the sound more than of what wood does when it's not solidly put together anymore. It just.
And with your groans?
It had pretty much been the same thing. I think creaks had been a choice in my head at one point in time, and no, the elevator doesn't creak either.
No, the elevator doesn't work. I already forgot.
No, the elevator grates. The elevator makes a grating sound. I had thought of creaks for both of them, and then apparently had decided on neither.
Then even in the same paragraph, entre croissant, is that this crossing? Yeah, please.
I just felt it was a difference of rhythm, and then I thought, no, it has to do with the way you are reading. But in fact, I think that there is a different energy in the text according to the translation. And I like both translations, but I feel there are some differences. Yeah, it's a kind of vibration.
Even as basic as a word as là-bas, which you have over there and you have back there, to me that's about visualization. I'm not sure. I often find the hardest words to translate are the simplest ones, the ones that everyone learns in French 101, for example. But in this case, là-bas, because
no, in the short story, the word là-bas, it is stressed because it's in Italy. So okay, my English is not enough good, so I don't know what's better back there or over there.
We can give you about 5 different interpretations.
No, I guess I asked that because I'm working on a text now which takes place in an apartment complex, and I made the author do a whole map of the apartment so that when he used these kind of indications, I could see it in my mind, and then I could make my decision based upon an image.
My theory about translation, I'm not a professional translator, but I had to work on this translation of my own book, and my theory is what's important is not fidelity, but loyalty.
Oh, I like
To
that.
be,
That's
yes,
lovely.
yeah.
That's
To be
wonderful.
loyal to the text is more important than to translate literally. And I was often asked questions about this translation from Wolof to French, and I used to say in French, I will try to translate it into English. J'ai traduit sans traduire, tout en traduisant. Okay, you translate, but in a way you don't translate, but you translate. Voilà, c'est ça.
Well, I
You are
mean,
always navigating.
well, I'm sort of intrigued by you saying that you translated yourself from Wolof into French. I mean, I imagine that French has a wider vocabulary since it has a longer literary history in terms of just pure writing. I mean,
You know,
correct me if I'm wrong.
yes, you are wrong. You are wrong. You know, I've been the first to be surprised after the French version was when I finished it. The book in Wolof, it's I think 240 or 50 pages, let's say. But in French, it was 400 pages.
Wow.
So you rewrote it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I see a lot of translators in the audience, a lot of people I know, people I don't know, and I'm sure you all have questions that have arisen, and please, don't be shy. We have someone with a mic, or maybe you can speak up, or maybe you can walk up. So, don't all jump at once.
Yeah.
Yes, Marianne.
I was wondering, I've had that experience often. Usually English is supposed to be shorter, but sometimes to convey something that doesn't have a word in English in the part of the sentence, I often find that it becomes much longer in English than it was in the original Catalan Spanish. Why do you think your translation from Wolof into French was so much longer? Was it
Oh,
because
yeah.
Yeah, the question is, why was your translation from Wolof into French so much longer? From Marianne, a very distinguished translator from Catalan.
Okay, I can. My answer may. I can give an example. It may sound shocking. You know, it's very simple because have done what I call contextual translation. Because the gap between French and Wolof, it's a cultural gap, everything you want, is so different that you just can't translate literally. It won't work. As example I give, just the first sentences of the book. Adina dunda de, lenen newu fi badu, li rek demal mangi ñew. It took me 2 pages to translate it into French, because if you say it just, you translate into French just like that, nobody will understand, and you will miss a lot. You will lose a lot in terms of vibration, of meaning, of energy, etc. In Wolof society, when somebody died, and my mother used to say exactly this. Yeah. Somebody died, so some member of our family, and she said, "Voilà, adina dunda de." Adina dunda de, it means aduna say human existence. Dund, it means to live, to be alive. De means to be dead. When she told me that, I could understand more than what she was saying. If you put it in a book in French, they just will say, no, what does it mean? So you have to contextualize and you have to translate, but to contextualize doesn't mean that you are a sociologist explaining.
Yeah.
You do it as a novelist. to do it as a novelist, and that's why it can be very long.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you let a lowly translator do that for you? Add 2 pages at the beginning.
The first part of
Yeah.
the question wasn't.
I said it's very interesting that you needed to expand by 2 pages artistically, but what if it's a translator faced with the same dilemma? Would you let that translator add 2 pages?
Yes.
Please.
It's a very
Yeah.
good question.
Can
Yes,
you be
yes.
a critic for all of the books that ever come out of translation?
Somebody, a Senegalese woman, Jenna Bagay, tried to translate this book for her thesis in traductology in Paris. And I said, okay, you go ahead. If it's good, we publish it. But it is a normal way to do things. You write a book and someone else translates. She's very, very good, very bright, etc. But she had too much respect for the text. So I did it myself. I said, excuse me, I think I will do it. And Ngugi Wachongo, who is here in New York, he writes in Kikuyu, but in general, he translates his own books, and when someone else translates, he's always here to check if everything is correct. Yeah, it's very, 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 very difficult, but the solution for now is just the writer we translate, and from these French translations, it has been translated into English, Spanish, etc.
I was wondering if either of you two would like to take up the same question
Yeah.
on sort of unpacking or being longer or being faithful or loyal or cheating.
I'm getting better at being freer. I had tended earlier on, and I've been doing this for going on 30 years now, to stay close because I was so afraid.
13, you said.
3-0.
Right?
Because I was so afraid to not be faithful. And I learned, I love what you said, to be more loyal. And later on in this same piece where you have moi, le balayeur, and I fell in love with this, so I kind of went on my own. And I realized that the sweeper was not going to do anything for an English readership. So I went the custodian who sweeps the floors. So there is one example. Normally I don't elaborate quite that much, but it just seemed the only right thing to do in English. So sometimes, yes.
And Allison?
I think it's something that I wish people would be, and by people I mean readers and critics, I guess, would be more comfortable with happening, because when you're working from French into English, sometimes it's not so much of a problem because the cultures are similar enough, there's enough overlap, we know what hors d'oeuvres are, we know, that the French have a 2-hour lunch in the middle of their workday. These things are culturally known by a lot of English speakers, so you don't necessarily have to explain that. But if you're working from a culture that is so vastly different from anything that we know, which is what a lot of these African writers are, to do a gross overgeneralization, then you need more of that explanation in order for the story to make any sense.
You also went out on more of a limb in your translation in the use of profanity, for example. Like, oh mon Dieu becomes, holy fucking Christ. I don't know what. But,
I have a very interesting relationship with profanity in that I don't really use it in my own life. And except when I start speaking French with French people, in which case I just start swearing up and down, because to me it is a little, the stronger curse words are more culturally accepted in French than they are in English. Mm-hmm. And so I like the opportunity of bringing good swear words into literature in English. And in this specific case, I think it did have a lot to do with the seething rage that I was feeling in the narrator of, you know, it's, there's nothing he can do about it, but every so often he's going to get really angry about that.
Pissed off, you can
Yeah,
say.
really pissed off about that.
Are there more questions? Yes.
I have a question for the author. So you were saying that you translated this from Wolof into French, and before you give this translation to these two lovely ladies to be translated into English, did you envision that they would that you would have one that's a little more emotional and visceral, and that one that was more colloquial? Like, did you envision one over the other? Or were you just expecting them to be vastly different? Or, because sometimes, I guess as translators, we want to be faithful to what the original language says, but sometimes that's a dilemma. Sometimes I would want to do, I translate from English into Spanish, and sometimes I want to be just as colloquial and use those expressions, but sometimes I want to be also, you know, emotional, visceral, and use maybe a higher linguistic register. So I'm just, what did you envision? That was the bottom line.
Yes, yes. You know, even when we write in French, there are some words, very expressions, very difficult to translate into English. Yeah, because I remember in one of my books there was a quartier populaire. Et the translator of Le Cavalier et son ombre, he put working district area. In a quartier populaire, nobody works. You know, c'est ça. It was, yeah, we had a conversation about, or le mot case. If you put hut, okay, it's close to the meaning, but it's not exactly that. You know, no. To me, it was a surprise. I didn't know even that Alison and Marjolaine were going to translate. I just knew we will have two translators. So it's for me, it's yeah, it came as a surprise. And as a very good one. Because, yeah, I know I don't know English very well, but when I read one of my texts translated from French to English, I can tell. Yeah, I can say here, no, it doesn't work. Yeah, I may not be able to find the right words in English, but I can be sure that it doesn't work. And we have discussion. This evening, I have a feeling of perfection. Yeah, I don't do it because they are here. Yeah, I don't need to. I mean, by perfection, I mean, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to say in French. And I find it in different ways in the two translations. And this, like I said already, yeah, it's fascinating. In fact, there is a third, I did forget, a third translation of this piece for the American reader review here in America. Haven't read it by someone I know, Alex Dikoff. Yeah, he was my student at Rutgers University. He's young. I haven't read it, he has done it, but I'm sure, because he's so bright, I'm sure it will be another translation, another feeling, but as good as these two.
Excellent. Thank you. Yes.
I can step out into the aisle here. I have a question for the translators. when you're translating, there's always certain things that you can never like quite get right, and then there's certain things that work out like way better than you expected them to, and sometimes you find these things that like it almost works better in English than it did in French. And I was wondering if you could each give us an example of something that you tried really hard to find a solution to and couldn't quite work out, and then something where you found a really great solution to it that either makes you sort of like pat yourself on your back like, oh, that was so clever, or where you sort of feel like you found something in the text, in the English text, that was not quite so obvious in the French.
Well, I can start with the thing that I was quite pleased with myself for figuring out, which was the vacant lot and vacant expressions link. And then I was also really proud of myself because, oh, where is it? The what is the original? It's the other page.
On the previous slide.
It
Can you
was
go back
the enfance,
Oh,
right before
the
là-bas,
Là-bas, oui.
whatever it was.
You have something
It was
else.
the vagabond, the
Right.
enfance vagabond.
Vagrant you had, I think.
And I realized that vagabond and vague sounded similar, and I was able to put in vagrant and vacant. And that was one of those moments where I just went, ooh, hey, that's really cool. Yeah. In terms of things that I just can't stand, là-bas, I hate coming across that in anything. I'm dealing with that in 2 other pieces right now, and I just hate it. And honestly, the is it here?
The previous.
The creuset.
That was. Could we have the previous slide, please? Is it possible?
No, it's this one.
It's this
Hang
one.
on.
Okay.
I think. Hang on. Is it
No,
that?
because
Or
this is.
it next.
I can't see them.
Next one.
No?
If you don't mind, the next slide.
Is there
I
someone?
think. Is that? Yeah.
I think we've been. Okay. No.
It's the when he's dreading the return of the people, and there's 3 single word sentences. It's creuser. I think it's creuser, perforer, étouffer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Étouffé, yes.
and I was trying to find more assonance. I was trying to find more ways that the words could be more similar, and it just all the verbs end the same in French, and they don't in English as a general rule. There are not rules about ER verbs and IR verbs and all that. So I found a little. I linked bore and break with the B's, and then I linked break and suffocate with the long A sounds at the end. But I still don't like it.
But that's why in that one, I kind of struggled with that. I went to the ing endings.
Yeah.
What I did do was the poking, penetrating, and I was hoping to find something
Another
with a
P.
P,
Yep.
but it did quite make that.
Okay, I think that's all we have time for. Was there another? Yes? Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Anyway, well, the poems will be posted on the website of PEN, I'm sure, in the next week or so. I want to thank all 3 of you. This was very illuminating.
Thank you so much.
And as they start to leave the stage, maybe the next 4 people, actually, if you're here, I hope, I pray.
Yeah, the other speakers. So
Yes.
we're not really taking an intermission. It's just a sort of
Mariposa?
transition
Yeah.
while we change the panel.
Okay.
We're also going to put a few more seats up here if people are interested in sitting down. So the other panelists, if you want to come up, please. So just to let you know, this is not an intermission. It's just a short shift.
Well, a few bilingual people here. We have Latin America very well represented on the stage tonight. Well, I should say the Americas. I don't know whether you were taught that it's one continent or two. I was taught that it was two, and I was surprised, actually. That's something to talk about, yeah. I was sort of surprised to consider that Europeans thought that we were just one continent. I think we're actually very many, you know. And if Europe and Asia are two continents, then what are the Americas, right? Several. At any rate, we have first of all, what's very great about this half of the program also is that we have various people with slam poetry experience. Not including myself, actually. We just do the slam translation, which is a little bit different. First of all, Mariposa, who I'm meeting actually all of you for the first time tonight, so this is terrific. We have had no rehearsal, so we're going to try to be spontaneous. Working with the poem, though, that everyone has just received in the past week. Puerto Rican poet and performance artist Mariposa Maria Teresa Fernandez was born and raised in the Bronx. The first in her family to graduate from college. Congratulations. She earned a BA and an MA at NYU, my alma mater also.
That's my mom's accomplishment.
So, how many NYU people here? I don't know. I once asked for a discount at a bookstore in the East Village because I was an NYU student, and they laughed me out of it, you know. They made me pay more, actually, you know. That's okay.
It's officially a poets event now. When it's
Yeah.
here, it's all good.
Well, now even baptized. In her poems, which often combine Spanish and English lines, Mariposa explores themes of empowerment, family, and identity. She is the author of Born Bronxeña, Poems on Identity, Love, and Survival. Her poetry has been included in the Norton Anthology of Latino Literature, the Afro-Latin Reader, History and Culture in the United States, and Burn Rush the Page, a Deaf Poetry Jam. And she is going to be translated into, I gotta say, 3 very different kinds of Spanish, and we'll have to talk about that. Eva Gastiasoro, yes, I got it, is a writer and performance artist, translator, and teacher originally from Nicaragua. She has lived in New York City since 1983. Her theater work has been produced internationally and throughout the United States. The Forgotten Dialect of the Heart, El Dialecto Olvidado del Corazón, published by Diaz Gray, is her selection and translation into Spanish of poems by Jack Gilbert. Oh, sorry. The French, you know. So, her first novel, Todos Queríamos Morir, will be published in Nicaragua this coming month. Yeah, so it is an up-to-date bio. It's not from... The picture was a little old, but right. This is not Urioan, no, but this is. Urioan Noel is a poet, critic, translator, and performer who teaches at NYU. His books include Invisible Movement, Nuyorican Poetry from the 60s to Slam, and the forthcoming Buzzing Hemisphere Rumor. And Ezequiel Zeidenberg, was born in Buenos Aires in 1981. He has published the poetry collections Doxa and La Lírica Está Muerta, Sin Sentidos Comunes, an illustrated book of Spanish limericks. I thought limericks were just Irish. But is due to appear this year as transvestite limericks. And priestly, too, I imagine, yes. And very holy. He has also published collections of poems by Mark Strand and Ben Lerner, and has books by Weldon Keith and Denise Levertov in press.
Yeah,
so, it's okay.
Enough,
yeah. Anyway, a very long bio. So clearly 4 very accomplished people. And without further ado, Mariposa.
Thank you. Did you get Ura Yohan? Did you get him? Yeah? Okay. I'm so happy to be here and really honored. I want to just say that the Nuyorican Poets Cafe is like home to me, and really played an instrumental role in nurturing me as a poet. So it's good to be home, it's good to be here, it's good to be in a place where I've been nurtured and really mentored by so many great poets like Pedro Pietri and all the pioneering Nuyorican poets. And I just want to, before I start, dedicate my reading tonight on the eve of Mother's Day weekend to my mom, and the memory of my mom and her vision for me. And and to all the mothers in the house and mothers of poetry, not just the biological mothers, right? And mothers of peace and social action. And also to Oscar Lopez Rivera, who is, for those of you who have not, who are not aware, he is the longest held political prisoner in the Americas and in the world. Puerto Rican, born in Puerto Rico, raised in Chicago, Vietnam vet, won the Bronze Star, earned the Bronze Star while serving for this country in Vietnam, and a Puerto Rican activist and artist who's been serving sentence, disproportionate sentence of 33 years. Actually, this month commemorates 34 years that he's been in U.S. federal prison for fighting for the independence of Puerto Rico, not convicted of any violent act, but with the crime, political crime of seditious conspiracy. So with Oscar in mind and the campaign that I'm a part of and that Ura Yoang and many people are a part of for his freedom, we claim him as the Puerto Rican Mandela, the Mandela of the Americas and of this 21st century. And I dedicate my reading to Oscar and to his family. Ay, por favor, God bless America. God bless America. Ay, please, por favor, God bless America. Land that I love with a broken heart, Lord. Stand beside her, though she's ruled by warmongering men, and guide her because she is ruled by warmongering men. Through the night with the light from above, 'cause we're in the dark ages now. From the mountains, strip mines by greedy corporations. Through the prairies, soaked with the dried blood of the Native Americans. Through the oceans, polluted by contaminants, and white with petrochemical foam. God bless America. Ay, please, por favor. God bless America, my home, because of the Atlantic slave trade, sweet, and U.S. colonialism and imperialism. Home. Que Dios le bendiga a todas las Américas. Thank you.
And now Eva.
I didn't have that last line.
It's a slam.
Yeah.
Okay, but you could throw it in if you want.
Yeah, I've thrown in some things. Well, ay Dios, por favor, bendice la América. God bless America. Ay Dios, por favor, bendice la América. Tierra querida con un corazón partido, Señor. Ponte a su guarda, aun si la rigen hombres sedientos de guerra. Ponte a su guía, porque la rigen hombres sedientos de guerra. Atraviesa la noche con la luz de los cielos, porque estamos en era plena de oscuridad. De las montañas despojada por minas y codicia de corporaciones. Las praderas embebidas con la sangre ya seca de nativos de América. Los océanos inmundos, polución de contaminantes, la espuma blanca de petroquímicos. God bless America. Ay Dios, por favor bendice la América, mi hogar, por la trata de esclavos a través del Atlántico, dulce hogar, por el colonialismo, el imperialismo de Estados Unidos, mi hogar, freedom for all the Americas, libertad para todas las Américas.
Udo Johan.
Thank you, gracias. Great to be at the New Rican. Ay, por favor, Dios bendice América. Dios bendiga América. Ay, por favor, Dios bendice América. La tierra que amo, con el corazón roto, Señor, acompáñala, aunque es gobernada por hombres mercaderes de guerra, y guíala, porque es gobernada por hombres mercaderes de guerra, la noche entera con la luz de las alturas, porque estamos ahora en la edad oscura. Desde las montañas, minadas a cielo abierto por corporaciones avaras, por las praderas, empapadas con la sangre seca de los nativos americanos, por los océanos, polucionados por contaminantes y blancos con espuma petroquímica. Dios bendiga América. Ay, por favor, Dios bendice América. Mi hogar, por el comercio transatlántico de esclavos, dulce, y el colonialismo e imperialismo de los Estados Unidos. Hogar, libertad para todas las Américas.
Bravo. Padre.
¿Me prestas este?
Hi, yeah, I feel blessed to be here at the New Yorican Poets Cafe. You know, I'm Argentinian, and we're not a very well-known community, but I tried my hand at doing this poem in Argentinian Spanish. So, I've never performed before, that's why I dressed as a priest. You know, for the people here who know anything about Argentina, if you want anything to sound Argentinian, you have to throw in some che there, which I have done for you. Ay, che, Diosito, please. Bendecía Yanquilandia. Dios te bendiga, Yanquilandia. Ay, che, Diosito, please. Bendecía Yanquilandia. Señor, en esta tierra que yo amo, con el corazón roto, ponete firme junto al pueblo. Viva Perón. Por más que la gobiernen los milicos, y guíala, puesto que la gobiernan los milicos, a través de la noche, con tu luz, desde lo alto, puesto que ahora estamos en los años oscuros. Por todas las montañas violadas, perforadas por empresas angurrientas, por todas las praderas empapadas de sangre seca de los aborígenes, por los mares, contaminados de desechos tóxicos, blancos, de espuma petroquímica. Dios te bendiga, Yanquilandia. Ay, che, Diosito, please, bendecía Yanquilandia. Mi hogar, por culpa del tráfico de esclavos, dulce, y del colonialismo y el imperialismo yanquis, Yankees go home. Hogar. Freedom for the Americas, each and every one of them.
You know, when Mariposa gave me a few poems to choose from, and rather than choose one, I had thought maybe My Mother's Smile. Was it My Mother's Eyes? My Mother's Eyes. I was thinking, well, you know, Mother's Day, and then there's so much subjectivity around the figure of the mother, and I thought, why don't we could do that? And then, Yoroyan, you were the first to say, no, we have to do this. Why?
We're at the New Yorican. It's the most performative of the poems, right? And it also opens up this like geopolitical space to think about the Americas, even the basic problem, how do you translate America into America, right? And the different approaches to that, so.
And you guys both agreed with him, like right away, or you just figured he chose, so?
Yes, definitely. Urayon is a seasoned performer, and I tend to trust his instincts.
And Ava, you at one point wrote to me, so we're each going to do our own thing, right? And I got a little.
I wasn't sure because you guys were talking before. So you guys were telling each other what to do, and at some point I said, okay, just tell me what to do.
Ah, okay, yeah. No.
I'm okay with whatever.
And bringing it back to you, you said you were curious to see, what would happen to, these were poems that you wanted to see in Spanish.
Yeah, I was really, I didn't know which poem was selected until I got here and Johan told me, and then I was really excited that this was the one that was chosen. And for me, I just to give a little background on when I wrote this poem, it was in 2001, and it was shortly after 9/11. And a month before 9/11, I had the opportunity to go to the United Nations World Conference Against Racism in Durban, South Africa. And it was an amazing experience, and it was the first time that I had the chance, that I had the opportunity to really travel and leave the country. And at that time, there was a huge reparations movement from the diaspora, the African diaspora, of reparations for the transatlantic slave movement. And that conference was overshadowed by the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and the media kind of just really didn't give an objective view. And I remember Bush was president, and he ordered Colin Powell to leave. And those of us from the United States were left with, I remember being at that conference, actually, and going to the registration and having them change my name tag. And instead of saying my name and then United States, I made a request that it say Puerto Rico. And I noticed that I was just received and embraced in such a way after I made that minor change in my name tag. But needless to say, I saw, poverty, I saw so much, and it was like a microcosm of all the turmoil happening in the world. And as a poet, I thought to myself, wow, this is like Bob Marley's song, so much trouble in the world. And I came back. When I went through customs, the custom agent stamped my passport, and he said, welcome home. And I said, yeah, God bless America. Not knowing, that was like September 4th. Not knowing that something was going to happen in our city that was going to have my neighborhood in the Bronx transform, and I was going to see American flags in every window, thanks to the Daily News, and the New York Post. I don't know if you guys remember that they printed newspapers with the American flag, and it was like in every window, and it was like so surreal and scary, and God Bless America and the song got shoved down our throats. And this poem was actually my poetic reaction to that, and I think that, as a way to just be able to call the United States out on all of its contradictions. And we are in a country where we have political prisoners, and right now just the whole Black Lives Matter movement and what's happening with movements against police violence and police brutality, just exposing all of the contradictions and Oscar and all the other things. I think that this poem is important for that reason.
Thank you. It changes a lot when it goes into Spanish.
It does.
It does.
And all the different versions. I got really emotional, and I didn't expect to have that reaction. But I just want to thank each of you, for giving me the gift of, especially as a third generation Nuyorican, where, because of the, my forces of acculturation and colonialism, where, this language, which was the language of my grandmother and my ancestors, which is a language also of the colonizers, right? But still, it was the language that I first learned to receive love and express love as a child that was taken from me, and that I wasn't able to communicate with my own grandmother, and that I'm reclaiming as an adult, that I began to reclaim as a young adult, and I still reclaim it. And, and I just want to really, you gave me such a gift, like each of you. Like I have these three beautiful versions, and I love, Yankee Landia.
That's the way we call it in Argentina.
Don't forget me.
No, I gotta thank Michael because I am a butterfly, and Michael, he has like a powerful poetic net, butterfly net, and he caught me. And you're a fellow NYU alum, so thank you.
Thank you. Really, this is Ava. When I said, I figured, well, we've got North America, we've got Central America, we got South America via Italy, I think, kind of Argentinian. But Ava, you said, well, literary Spanish is the same. And would you take that back now? Looking at these differences, do you see them as regionalisms? Do you see them as a sign of personality differences between you? Or?
Well, there is a need, there is a desire to perform in both of them, and I was not taking it as that. For me, it's literature, and here is a poem. And I was trying to, my belief is that if you have to read what the poet wanted to say, and you have to create poetry in the language that you're translating into. So my desire is to find the poetry that you were trying to do. I never saw you perform. I never read anything else that you had written. And I read this, and this was what we were supposed to do. And for me, it was a challenge. A challenge to understand first what you were saying, not necessarily playing or performing, but find poetry in it.
You found it.
And Orayan, you went. You went for it. You sang. Did you work with a sort of known Spanish translation of America the Beautiful, or did you come up with your own?
No, I mean, I gotta say, I share, some of Mariposa's trajectory in terms of the cafe. We have very different, right, poetic styles otherwise, but we have that in common, right? The investment in this space and the investment in performance culture. And I can say that also as a scholar of New Rican poetry, it was, I think, maybe a strategic advantage in some ways, right? But maybe not, right? Because maybe I picked up on things like rhythm, right? If you notice, my translation isn't really very idiomatic. There's a lot of word clusters that work well in English, but that really in more elegant Spanish require a lot of prepositional clauses, I think kind of like you did, right? But I'm like, okay, if I do that, I don't know how to do that without killing the rhythm. And my reading of Mariposa's work is that rhythm has that truth and that power, right? And I had to have so syncopation for me became a guiding principle, right? If I could hear the drum, right, and I could drum it, right? If I could work it from my heartbeat, right? Then it was real. Even if it became a little bit less idiomatic than I would have liked, right? So I made a stylistic decision pretty quickly, right? That I was going to let the syncopation and the rhythm and the truth of that rhythm, right? Which hopefully crosses across languages, right? And relying on that, right? And then folks can always Google or look up, right, and do their own paraphrase translation for the actual content. So.
And Padre, you.
Sí, hijo.
Pietri was a reverend, right?
No, we should have coordinated outfits today because I didn't know what to wear, and I had, I was going to come, in my Muslim garb, but because I don't have much hair. But I was once actually when I was in Mexico, I went to a cathedral and I was wearing a Nehru shirt. And people came up to me and said, Padre, I felt so powerful. It is, I think the next time I have to go on stage, I'll remember that. But you also decided to make Mariposa completely Argentinian. You just totally assimilated her.
Well, it was not the intention at all. I don't believe in the very sharp distinction between an original and a translation.
Okay.
To me, a translation should be an autonomous poem, an autonomous version, and I think that's the best kind of homage that you can pay to another poet, to really embrace the poem and make it yours. I'm not the USA So that's, I mean, I don't assimilate
Yeah.
Other cultures so easily, so I just did a rendition. And also, the Argentinian community is not very visible in the U.S., and I thought it would be nice to give it some love from the stage.
No, I think you gave us a lot of love, really. I mean,
There's pretty much more when it came from where it came from.
He was blessing.
Yeah, absolutely. Benedica, all three of you came up with a different approach to this blessing, you know. Even God Bless America became something completely different in Spanish, you know, and it went from being this thing shoved down our throats, as you said so well, to being, you found some poetry in it, first of all, and you found, and actually you made it mean something, all three of you, I think, that maybe when we hear it in English, you know, it's just so automatically connected to this anthem and to baseball games and to Beyonce and, you know.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, to hear it first, you know, in Spanish, in the voice of another woman, it just really touched me deeply. And I felt like, you know, it was just such a gift, you know, to, like, it hit me, hearing it in Spanish, just the profound sadness behind the lines, and that was there when I wrote the poem. That I mean it, like really. Ay, por favor, please, God bless America. And there's a funny story actually that some filmmakers actually did a short film of me reciting this particular poem. So when they were editing it, their 4-year-old son was hearing this, you know, I guess looped over and over and over. And it was close to that period of the post 9/11 period. And he just learned, that's the way he thought the song went. So he went to school. And as a bilingual kid singing, ay, por favor, God bless America. Arguing with the teacher that this is how the song goes. But I was able to like really feel it in a way that I think that I've performed the poem like in a way that, you know, in a satirical way or just using sarcasm and, you know, and it becomes like a comical thing in the performance, but that wasn't my intention and that's not my intention, but oftentimes that's how audiences receive it. And it's not the intention. But then do you want to say something to that?
I think that the two stanzas that really you go deep, you know, because in the performance you hear the God Bless America and you hear the singing and you hear the voice coming up or down and very deep and all that, but the two stanzas in the center are very strong because of what you really reveal something that is very deep. But at the same time, it's poetry in it.
Yeah.
You know, and it has to do. So I concentrated more on what you wanted to say, taking it away from just the singing or the God Bless America, or you know the prayer that everybody knows.
Right. Exactly.
You know, so when you went in there is what I wanted to concentrate, and that's what moved me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The truth is that, you know, I've had through poetry been able to see, you know, the country and the beauty of this country that ironically the political leaders are allowing to be destroyed by, you know, corporate greed. So I think that's there. And when I heard the Yanquilandia chair version, I didn't think that was like the Argentinian version. For me, I thought, wow, that's like so, you know, es super cool, like revolucionario, che, revolucionario. Whenever you hear che, like, you know, there's only, you know, one iconic poet.
Well, that's what I meant.
Revolucionario, yeah.
That's what I meant by Argentinian.
Oh, yeah. And I just actually came back from Cuba. I had the opportunity to go to Cuba earlier in April, and I went to Santa Clara and saw the town that Che liberated, that basically won the revolution, and I got to see, you know, visit the the mausoleum and the monument of Che. So I just thought, wow, that is really the revolutionary spirit of the poem. And then hearing Ura Yoang's version, because as a Isleño, island-born Boricua, who has always been just a brother, you know, the whole psychological trauma of being Puerto Rican, born here in the US, and not only having the language taken from us, but having our own people taken away, and the division that colonialism actually causes, you know, by that we experience, or some of us, a lot of us have experienced. It's changing now. We're changing, we're transforming it, but not being embraced by our own people, not being seen as real Puerto Ricans or authentic Puerto Ricans. Like, if you read the writings of the pioneering New Rican poets, like, you know, Miguel Piñero, you'll find that. So I say that, you know, that we have 3 Puerto Ricans, the categories. We have like Puerto Ricans, we have New Yorkers, and then we have the Mo Ricans. And the Mo Ricans are the Ricans who think they Mo Rican.
What are the Mo Ricans?
The Mo Ricans are the Ricans who think they Mo Rican, because they were born on the Enchanted Island. So Ura Yoang has never been a Mo Rican.
My dad is a gringo, so I can't front. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some questions from the audience. Am I right in being that sure?
Could I say something about? Okay, so here is the thing about the Americas, because you started with that, and I think that it's an interesting thing. When I first came to the United States and I was looking for work, and some of the things that they told me is, when did you come to America? I said, what? What does that mean? I am American. Not in English, American, because American is only like the way we call, it's a gentilicio, no? But we would never say America about the United States in Central America or Mexico, never. We would say los Estados Unidos. Or sí, America es una cosa de los americanos that is only used in the United States. We say los Estados Unidos, Canadá, no decimos Norteamérica porque México es parte de Norteamérica también. Okay? So for me, it's not the Americas, it's one continent, La América. So that's why I used bendice la América. And we would not say the 3 Americas, all of the Americas, no. La América, un continente completo, está América del Norte, América Central y América del Sur. Y el Caribe.
We're always somewhere around there.
Somewhere.
No. Geográficamente hablando, y según las Naciones Unidas, no, somos el Caribe y la América Latina, ¿no? Y la América Latina incluye Brasil, ¿no? Incluye las ¿cómo se llaman? Las al norte incluye Curazao, incluye las, ¿cómo se llaman?
Guayanas.
Las Guayanas. Guayanas, no. Guayana.
Sorry about that. I can't help it.
Boy can't help it.
Pero entonces es una cosa interesante, ¿no? Porque aquí
I'm not going to interpret for you. I could, but I'm no. No. You all understood. Thank you. And you all have questions. Oh. See, we took your microwave for that. That's what happens when you speak Spanish.
Oh, hay preguntas.
Sí, claro.
I was struck by milicos in Ezequiel's translation. It's because I lived in Chile. I guess it's a word that was very familiar to me there. I don't know sort of how much it circulates in other parts of the Spanish-speaking world, but just as a way of dealing with that warmongers, and I guess it resonated with me because I lived in Chile during the Bush administration and that whole period. So, but I was just struck by that word as a way. I mean, it sort of makes me wonder about the way that we in English talk about our leaders and oppressors and so on, and that milikos is this sort of very powerful and brief word.
Well, actually, I was trying to make the translation not only something that would work in the U.S., but also something that would have would resonate with our own history, with Argentina, Latin American history. Milico is a word in Argentinian, Spanish, and I think in Chilean Spanish as well. Enrique Winter, ¿qué decís? ¿Sí? Throughout, yeah. Milico, that stands for the military governments, the de facto governments that have taken power in Latin America in the 20th century, in the second part of the 20th century. So I wanted to kind of put those two things together, right? Also, well, there are the United States have a lot to do with those military governments in geopolitical terms, right? But I wasn't really accusing the United States. I just wanted to make it Argentinian, to make something that would resonate to my compatriots, yeah, and my own history, yeah.
Because it had to do with a time of military dictatorships. That's
exactly,
when it started in the 80s, no? 70s, 80s.
Well, in Argentina, the first one was in 1930.
You're right.
We have a very rich tradition. Long.
And I think that for Oroyewan, that same question would resonate differently with you. Because they're both talking about the military in terms of, that are specific to Latin American condition. You might be thinking more directly of the American military bases or something, or
Sure. Well, I tie that back to the question of the Americas. I mean, as somebody who teaches literature of the Americas, I'm all down politically, right, with what the two of you shared. But I can't help read Mariposa's poem and think of my grandmother, mi abuela, right, saying, esos americanos, meaning the gringos, right? But then talking about, with pride, right, how my abuelo, my grandfather served, right, in Korea, right? Americano, so using the kind of the banner of American service. So I think Puerto Rico's really unique colonial situation, and that doubleness where we are Americanos in a kind of hemispheric sense, but we're also collapsed into, right, the evil Americano, right? I think it was important to me, and I also think about how in kind of New Rican poetry history, right? I think of, I want to live in America, thinking West Side Story, right? No, for real, I mean, so many of the 60s poets were trying to create a space, right? That's how spaces like these came to be, right? Algarín thought, how can we create a kind of counter vision, right, of what the Puerto Rican diaspora is beyond the West Side Story stereotypes, right? And there's like 50 different New Rican poems that riff, right, on that in different ways, and we get then, of course, that in Rubén Blades and Willy Colón, right? I want to live in America with a kind of hemispheric Latin American vision, and you get Tato Laviera's American, right, and Diasporicans. There's a whole history of performative interventions into terms like American, and when they're performed, they get resignified, right, in a way that disarms them politically and allows them to be, right, what the people make them to be. And I know that that's part of Mariposa's poetics in poems like Diasporican, so I wanted to make sure that performance is foregrounded, right, because that's ultimately, you're fed a language, right, that's a kind of dirty language, dirty from history, dirty from politics, right, but somehow performance can be cleansing, right? And there's also a very Caribbean thing, and that humor that maybe seems apolitical or light. With Caribeños, there's always a lot of pain, right? And then dancing, music, syncopation become kind of counter rhythms, right, to the kind of imposed rhythms from the outside. So that sense that in that music, right, there's also hope, and there's also resistance, and there's also struggle, right? Also think back to listening to that music with my abuelitos, right? So I thought that the kind of everydayness, right, of those practices of listening and performing and public sharing, I wanted to foreground.
And you know, as Puerto Ricans, our U.S. citizenship came out of war and warmongering with the 1917 Jones Act, you know, so that Puerto Rican men could be drafted to serve in World War I. So it's interesting to like be in this conversation.
I see some questions. Alex, maybe? If you can boom out your question, I'll repeat it.
So another phrase that I thought was really interesting to see how the three of you translated differently was Native American. Besides the word America, we've got all different words for it in this country. Some Native Americans call themselves Indians, some call themselves indigenous people. I'm not familiar enough to know what in Spanish or in the different Spanishes that you speak, whether, you know, Ezequiel has Aboriginals. Is there a word indigenos or something that you could have used instead? Or if you could talk about the choice that you made, each of the three of you, and what is the normal phrase? And did you use the normal phrase or did you use a spun phrase?
Yeah, I tried to do this in meter, so I chose the word for the meter. The politically correct word in Argentina would be pueblos originarios. Indígenas, I think it means like people who were like born in the Indies, etymologically. And ab origine in Latin means from the origins. That's also a complicated, like a controversial notion. But to me, like using a particular rhythm was important. So I had to sacrifice maybe being perfectly PC and going for pueblos originarios.
Para mí también era una cosa, it was also, sorry, it was, it had to do with the poetry, and I needed to fit in there. But I'm also conscious of this thing about the Americas and the fact that we are the same. I mean, we are mestizos. We are a mixed race of so many races. The Spanish came and they were already mixed with Arabs. You know, the Berbers in the north of Africa. So there, for me, the United States not only hurt, I mean, the United States, the government. We're talking about a government. We're talking about imperialism. We're talking about an invasion. We're talking 1930s at the time of Argentina. We were invaded. Nicaragua was invaded, not Central America. Nicaragua was invaded. And, you know, they were there for 15 years. So for me, it was Los Nativos de América. Because we're talking about something bigger than just Native Americans of the United States.
Definitely.
Orayan, you also made a face like I did, because I think we were thinking the same thing.
Well, right. Teaching enough ethnic studies, I know that's a loaded term, right? And I've even been in conferences and with poets who identify in various ways. Debates, for example, about being indigenous versus native, and just in U.S. context, and the debates get really, really intense, right? So in a way, I think just the Nativos Americanos is a kind of unsatisfying, maybe too politically correct, but of a certain moment, right, alternative. But I think it got the Nativos and it got Americanos as a kind of predicate that could become more foregrounded, right? Los Nativos Americanos, right? You could read it that way, right? And then kind of emphasize the Americanness in the sense that we're, in the broader sense, we're thinking about it. But I wasn't happy with it with either version. Knowing, Mariposa's work a little bit, I made a guess, right? She probably wants it, whatever she means, she probably wants it to be clear, right, that Native Americans understood, right, in the everyday sense for being foregrounded here. She might have said Tainos or something if she was thinking about Puerto Rican, right, Aboriginal people. So I went with that, but I'm not satisfied. Yeah.
More questions? Yes, no, maybe? Yes.
My question is for Mariposa. After hearing all the different ways that they read it, when you first sang, I was actually thinking, I was at a film festival once, which turned out to be horrible, but The Green Zone, I think that was the name of the film about the U.S. invasion of Iraq. And it was this film, and it was an audience of mostly Iraqis. And there was one point where this anthem plays in the background, and as a person from this country, I was overcome because of the irony. And my friend sitting next to me like really didn't get it. You know, why is this such an ironic, such a powerful moment that this song is playing? Who cares? You know, they're throwing people into the back of a van. And as you were singing it, I was, you know, overcome, and then hearing the different interpretations, I was thinking, wow, like, could you see yourself reading it in a way, like, after hearing the three of them, do you see yourself reading it in a different way? Is there another way that you can imagine yourself reading it?
I was actually asking myself the same question as I was listening to each translation, because I'm definitely not the same person or the same poet who wrote this poem 14 years ago. And you know, one of the things that I remember learning from just watching people like Tato Laviera, you know, and Pedro Pietri, that they would recite poems. You knew the poem, right? But I think it's the emotion that you bring to it, or, you know, how you reinterpret the poem. And, you know, like Pedro had an amazing poem, the Spanglish National Anthem. And I've probably, you know, had the opportunity to hear him recite or sing that so many different times. And although it was a similar, it transformed as he transformed. But I think that as a performer, because it just opens me up to looking at it from you know, a performance artist aspect, you know, aside from being the poet. Like, this is something that I could experiment with, and that was actually what I was thinking when I was listening to the translations.
Thank you very much for that, and I think we can safely say somos todos americanos. Thank you for being for all that you brought, really, all four of you. Thank you to the audience. Thank you, Nuyorican Poets Cafe.
Thank
really.
you.
And see you next year.